Welcome back to Block TV, where it is time for a special fireside chat. And here we go. Here's a quote for you guys. Bitcoin is magic technology that allows us to have a trusted global currency that isn't tied to any political force. I did not say that. The man behind this statement is none other than Tim Draper, a well-known figure in traditional markets. Now, Draper sports a prolific venture capital investment career with prominent investments foreseeing the future and the past, so to speak, including the likes of Skype, Tesla, SpaceX, AngelList, DocuSign, Coinbase, and of course, Bitcoin. He made headlines worldwide when in 2014 he purchased Bitcoins at a U.S. Marshals Service auction that seized them from a Silk Road Marketplace website. A year ago, Draper raised eyebrows when he confessed to still hold that purchase, as well as the belief that Bitcoin will hit $250,000 by 2022. Now, this has been a year that has seen the sphere mainstream into traditional media and possible markets with news of Facebook's Libra, regulation, and Bitcoin's summer. Maybe it is the perfect time then to speak to a man like Tim Draper, who's joining us today from California. Mr. Draper, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me on the show. This is great.
Good. Excited to have you on the show. With me in studio also is Lokay Cohen, Vice President of BitTax, to help us understand the ins and outs of the markets, the cryptocurrencies, along with Mr. Draper. But Tim, I'm going to start with you, if I may call you Tim.
You can call me, people have called me much worse.
Okay. You still stand by that $250,000 prediction for Bitcoin in 2022?
Yeah, actually, and I hit the number on the head when I predicted 10,000 3 years before it hit 10,000, and it happened about within a week of my prediction, which is kind of like, sort of like the spirits have been with me. But 250,000 means that Bitcoin would then have about a 5% market share of the currency world. And I think that may be understating the power of Bitcoin. And as it becomes easier for people to use, and as people decide, if I've got a choice between Bitcoin and fiat today, they might choose fiat because fiat seems easier to pay Starbucks or whatever. But longer term, if people pretty much can do whatever they can do with fiat, with their Bitcoin, they're going to make the decision that they're going to like Bitcoin better than any fiat, because they know that their fiat will depreciate in value because naturally people have a natural inflation rate in their government. And if they have any distrust of their government, they're going to much prefer Bitcoin, because if the government isn't really, if they're using currency as a political force, they're going to lose out. I had a great experience with the president of Argentina, and I went down there because I was pretty curious. One of our entrepreneurs said that his family had built and lost their fortune 3 times in his lifetime, and he was only 30 years old, and they had lost it all to currency manipulation. And I went and I told the president about Bitcoin. Then I came back about 2 years later and I said, the last time we talked, Bitcoin was at 10,000, now it's at 4,000, but your Argentinian peso has dropped from 7.5 cents to 2.5 cents. I'll make you a bet, and I'll bet you that Bitcoin does better than the Argentinian peso over the next year or two. And he hedged a little bit, and I said, well, look, if the Argentinian peso does better, I'll double my investment in Argentina. And if the Argentinian peso does, if Bitcoin does better, you make Bitcoin a national currency, and the way Japan has, or New Zealand. And he, at first, he said, what do you mean? And then he realized that other countries had done it, and he got very interested, and he went back and looked into it. But horribly. Argentina has gone the other way, and they have made dollars illegal, and so everybody's stuck with these pesos. So once again, the Argentinian community, anybody who builds value there, anybody who's an entrepreneur who builds great value, tends to lose their fortune to currency manipulation. So definitely Argentina is going to be a great market for Bitcoin. But so will, even on subtle things, even if you have dollars, even if you're the US, you're generally going to want a currency that is trusted, has never been hacked, and has 150,000 miners making sure that the blockchain is correct, over the whims of some Fed and government entity that could be very political.
Entirely so, and but you hit the nail on the head. And before we move to the next question, I agree with you on all of that. But the thing is, governments, banks, or the Fed have been manipulating currencies for years. Why are so few of us aware of that fact, and mass adoption of Bitcoin is so far away yet?
Well, because I think the engineers haven't made it easy enough for everyone to use. But as you know, the younger people, if somebody's younger than 35 years old and I give them a choice, you can have one Bitcoin or $10,000, they will all take the Bitcoin. But if you give that same option to somebody who's much older, they'll take the dollars because they're not sure how Bitcoin, they say, I don't know how it works, but what they really mean is it's not that easy to use yet. Now, once you've set up a Coinbase account or a Bitcoin account of some sort, it's pretty easy, actually. Easy to pay, easy to work. I know that it's slowly but surely working its way into all of the e-commerce of the world.
Traditional trading.
What's that?
Into traditional trading eventually, you think?
Yeah, and all the things that you can do with a dollar, you will be able to do with Bitcoin. When that happens, your Bitcoin will naturally appreciate in value because there are only 21 million of them. And your dollars naturally decrease in value because there is this natural inflation that's built in. So people will want to operate with and hold dollars much the way they want to, will want to operate and hold Bitcoin much the way they would much rather hold dollar Argentinian pesos today. They will rather hold Bitcoin than dollar.
Now, you made
it's just a matter of all the engineers kind of coming together, building all those great things that they're building. And that's why I said sort of 2 or 3 years, well, I guess 3 to 4 years, that Bitcoin will hit $250,000. And then somebody asked me, well, what happens 20 years from now? And I thought, well, nobody's going to be comparing anything to dollars 20 years from now. Nobody's going to be using any kind of fiat currency 20 years from now.
First of all, what a brave man to say that. In this day and age, amen to that. Listen, entirely so, but you made an unconventional decision. Clearly, you have a good sense of the future, but you made this unconventional decision in 2014 to purchase confiscated Bitcoins from the Silk Road. And the problem of, still, as great as Bitcoin is, its reputation for the greater public is funny money. And the problem with it is that it was used in the past on that platform, on the Silk Road platform. What would you answer to those who still claim that Bitcoin is funny money?
Well, what's interesting is if it used to be that all these people were using it for nefarious purposes, but then and the U.S. Marshal's Office was saying, oh boy, we've got to shut this thing down. But then they realized that there was this blockchain that kept a perfect record, and they were catching everyone who was doing something nefarious. And then the U.S. Marshal's Office changed their approach, and they said, oh, no, it's okay. And they've actually been catching all of those criminals because they're using Bitcoin. If you are a criminal, you should use cash. Don't use Bitcoin because you're going to be caught.
They'll find you. Exactly. That's the hilarious thing. Just because we have Lokay Cohen with us here, the Vice President of BitTax, on those assets that, the genius behind Tim Draper was to purchase them, what is the legal standing of those types of assets?
Well, surprisingly, there's like about 2.6% out of the circulation of Bitcoin that were confiscated at some point. But the legal standing, as Tim Draper just said, the IRS using the blockchain analysis systems to track down the addresses that used for crime. And if the IRS, if the government, the US government was the one who sold it for you, so there you have the cleanest Bitcoin in the world,
isn't that the cleanest Bitcoin in the world?
Yeah.
But speaking of government, because at the end of the day, we're still controlled by them, SEC Chief Jay Clayton just this week finally said the word Bitcoin again. And he reacted to a question about, where the hell is that elusive ETF? This is what he had to say.
Ask you about Bitcoin. I know I've asked you many times about this in the last couple of years, but it's of intense interest to the viewers. Are we any further along on a Bitcoin ETF? I know you did a memo, you and your staff, a year and a half ago, where you made it very clear you were concerned about custody and the security of custody, and you were very concerned about the fact that much of the pricing of Bitcoin was done on foreign exchanges that had the potential to be easily manipulated. Now, your realm here is a Bitcoin ETF. Are we any closer, or have the people involved in the Bitcoin businesses in any way come closer to satisfying your concerns?
The short answer is yes, but there's work left to be done. Those were not trivial questions. How do we know that we can custody and have a hold of these crypto assets? That's a key question. And an even harder question, given that they trade on largely unregulated exchanges, is how can we be sure that those prices aren't subject to significant manipulation? Now, progress is being made, but people needed to answer those hard questions for us to be comfortable that this was the appropriate type of product.
Before we look,
Mr. Draper, is an ETF really what Bitcoin needs?
Well, I think it's one of many, many things that Bitcoin needs, and they are all coming. And I like the SEC's approach here. They've been, they know that they want to continue to protect the small investor, but they also know that this is so critical for the future of the world. It's going to create a much more frictionless economic system. And the US, if they had put heavy regulations on the internet early, they would have missed out on so much great technology, and it would have gone to other countries. And the SEC is managing this as best they can. They can't protect every single investor out there. They can't do all things to all people, but they're just sort of, they're guiding their way. They're working their way toward making sure that this is a token or a currency that people feel comfortable with. And I think that's great. I think I would probably personally have been more aggressive on allowing more innovations to happen, but I'm a venture capitalist, so I understand how regulators have to think, and I think the SEC's done an admirable job generally in managing this balancing act that they're trying to put together, because they really don't want to lose all this amazing technology that has come from Bitcoin, the blockchain, smart contracts. All of that stuff has a huge future. And it's so exciting. It's going to transform some of the biggest industries in the world. This is bigger than the internet, because the industries it's going to transform are bigger than the ones the internet transforms. So we're really in a very exciting time. and governance is trying, all the governments of the world are trying to adjust to this thing that is suddenly something they've always had control over, currency. And now it's global and frictionless and free and open, and it keeps perfect records. I mean, it's so much better than a fiat currency. So I think governments are having a hard time letting go of something that could end up being out of their control, but also better for their country. And the fact that it is global makes it very difficult for any one country to try to control it in any way or another. I mean, imagine if you're somebody from Sudan and you have money in Sudanese money, and you get pushed out of the country and you're a refugee in Greece. Well, all of a sudden you have nothing and nobody takes Sudanese money. Well, if you had some portion of your money in Bitcoin, then you could be pushed out of Sudan and then take down your Bitcoin in Greece, and you could start your life again. I think there are some really amazing applications that none of us have even thought of that are going to just make the value
and change everything
of Bitcoin to just surge. Yeah, what's that?
No, I said entirely so, and so I'm wondering, Lokay, because you deal with these regulators, and in your sphere of expertise, why is it though? Clearly, they're trying to do the right thing, but it's been 2 years.
Right.
Why is it taking so long for the SEC?
We just heard the official answer. My educated guess is that there are various of unofficial answers, which one of them is probably that the SEC did not even make the first decision regarding cryptocurrency, which is what is a utility and what is a security and where the lines go. So once they figure this out, they will be able to say much more, and then maybe to get to the point of the ATF, which is far, far away from their ability to understand right now. But what they are doing, they are taking this approach, as Mr. Draper just said. They are saying, we're going to watch the citizen, the investor, the private one, who does not have a lot of capital and knowledge to know what is he getting into.
Right.
But we are kind of be maybe softer towards the one who are institutionally investors, or the ones who has private and individual people who has more than 1 million worth of capital. And then they will be able to trade with much maybe dangerous tools than the private regular investors has.
Entirely so. That said, regulation, and Mr. Draper, we talk about regulation and that it's important, but it also, many would argue, stifles innovation. I think everybody understands we don't want that to happen. That said, there is a race going on right now, especially with Libra's announcement. And do you think global adoption of crypto can actually happen without regulation? Case in point, and your opinion on it is interesting to us. The Gram is supposed to launch at the end of October. The people behind the Gram on the Telegram network don't seem to give a damn about regulation. They're going to go ahead, come hell or high water, with or without permission. Where does the limit go? So, do you think that's something that will disrupt also the crypto sphere, that will affect Bitcoin at all? And, what does one say to them when they're saying, look, we have this decentralized technology, we're just going to go ahead with it?
Yeah, I think all of these things actually point toward good news for Bitcoin. But something bigger is happening to the world. Tough to be talking to somebody in Israel about this, but geographic borders were set up for people to be tribal so that they could protect their people could build value, they could do sort of extraordinary things and benefit from those extraordinary things without having people take it from them or invade their territory or whatever. Well, I think we are in the process of going global, and the tribes are are being less relevant, or they're less relevant. And I think that's difficult for people in governments they're struggling with it, because they're sort of saying, well, this is my whole purpose in life, is to be a government official, and all of a sudden I'm realizing that, you know, I can be taken over by AI, that as a government, I now have to think like a business. I have to go provide services to my people, or they will move somewhere else. All of these governments now are kind of have to start thinking, well, what am I providing, and what am I getting, what am I taking from my constituents? They have to start thinking like businesses, and think about their constituents as customers, because governance is being provided across borders now. Estonia started this. They had their virtual residency program. I'm the third virtual resident of Estonia, and that residency program has not offered too much, except that I can set up a bank account and I can set up a business in the European Union very quickly through this program. But governance is really insurance, and insurance can really be provided just with Bitcoin, smart contracts, and a little artificial intelligence to take out the fraud. That can be provided by a government anywhere to anyone. And so governments are now, there is a real struggle going on. And in some cases, you're seeing the roar of the dying lion, you know, these governments saying, well, you know, we're going to create a trade war, or we're going to create tension, or we're going to create a real war, or whatever, or a wall. All those things are created because this is a really difficult situation for people in government. They're looking and they're saying, well, how do we justify ourselves? How does this all make sense?
And I know, Mr. Draper, first of all, I think
then they're saying, well, they're holding on to control as hard as they can for as long as they can, knowing that really the world's going global. These borders are going to eventually disappear, and their tribalism is going to change. So they've got to change their mindset, and that is a difficult thing to do.
I couldn't agree more, and especially sitting here in the Middle East. But I think it's a worldwide. We've seen this nationalistic move, of governments to stay within the borders. And I'm wondering then, though, I'm asking you, does the world need a cataclysmic event, like another financial crash like 2008, for people to understand that the current system is defunct, that the world is a big place, that it can be borderless? I mean, that's an entirely bigger psychological discussion, but does Bitcoin need that type of a cataclysmic crash?
It's very hard to say at this point, to my opinion. Like Tim Draper just said, we have seen in Argentina, we have seen local places of distrust in the government, that people are buying Bitcoin. And we have seen places that the currency is crashing, the local one, and people are buying Bitcoin. But it's not to the extent of global adoption. It's just local issues that Bitcoin can help with. It will take time until we see another crisis like 2008 or something like this, and then it will be the biggest test. But my hope is that actually regulation will take its part, and something like Libra or Gram for that matter, and the social media will kick it in to the global adoption, and will make it easier for people to adopt the technology and to see that it's not so hard to head an account in Coinbase and to sell and buy cryptocurrencies.
Amen to the day where social media becomes for the people and not for election manipulation. There, I said it. But that said, Tim, you're also clearly, you're a big believer in Bitcoin. I'm wondering with you though, are you a big believer or a blind believer to the point of the pump? Let me explain. Let us hear what Anthony Pompliano was pounded with on CNBC as of late.
right? It's not personal opinion. It's not somebody else's opinion. The math suggests that it is non-correlated to negatively correlated to major asset classes.
How much of your own dough is in it?
Yeah, over 50% of my net worth is in Bitcoin, and I don't plan to sell it.
I forbid that. That's insane.
You forbid that.
That breaches everything about diversification and investing. That's crazy.
How much of your net worth is in the stock market?
In any one stock, never more than 5%. In any one sector, never more than 20%. I teach this stuff. You never go beyond concentrations of that nature. 50%? Shame on you. That's nuts.
Okay, there's Anthony Pompliano being pounded about putting 50% of his portfolio on Bitcoin. Is he crazy?
No, I mean, I think it depends on what country he lives in.
True.
But some countries are in very difficult situations, and if you are not comfortable with your country's currency, then Bitcoin is probably makes a lot of sense. And he's probably a real believer in this decentralization of everything, which I am. And I think that he's probably thought it through for his own use. I don't make recommendations. Ever since I recommended to my father-in-law to buy some stock and it went straight from 12 to 2, I don't ever recommend anybody do anything. They can follow me, they can do whatever they want, but
I'm not recommending.
I don't ever say I'm recommending.
True. Father, I'm not going to do the follow-up question of asking, how that went down at home. But in the past, you mentioned that Bitcoin is the most secure place to have capital, but capital is stolen from, I'm wondering with you, do you see a future where insurance companies will also cover Bitcoin, which will help, the greater public get into that as well?
Yeah, I actually think that this is one of the big opportunities I'm looking for as a venture capitalist, are the people who are potentially creating a new kind of insurance company that is completely automated, where they use Bitcoin, where people pay their premiums in Bitcoin and issue claims, and those claims are checked out by artificial intelligence. And now some of these you don't even need the AI for, because let's say you're doing life insurance, somebody dies, that's an event, and that could actually that could trigger the smart contract to pay out the Bitcoin, and it could just be automatic. It doesn't have to be, no people really have to be involved in that. And I think insurance has a big opportunity in Bitcoin. I think in venture capital, there's a huge opportunity. I'm looking forward to the moment where, right now it doubles my legal costs and doubles my accounting costs to do this. But I want to be able to raise money in Bitcoin, invest in all the companies in Bitcoin, have all the companies pay their employees and suppliers in Bitcoin, and then all the accounting is completely done on the blockchain. It's already done, and you don't need the audit, you don't need the accountant, the bookkeeper. They're all, you can use them for advice and other things, but you don't have to use them to count the money. And then have a smart contract with my limited partners, where if one of the companies gets sold, it can the money will just fall into their wallets as the waterfall goes. The money first goes back to the investors, and then on the profits we split them according to whatever the deal is. I think that is a major opportunity. And I'm hoping that ends up being something that the various SEC make legal.
And which leads me to you, or what is preventing insurance companies, other than the legalities, for doing, for ensuring that right now?
Well, it was published earlier that Coinbase is considering to open its own firm to insure, because crypto exchanges do have a lot of problems with insurance. Basically, some of the firm are not willing to insure them, and the other one who takes them a lot of money, which lead to a lot of exchanges like Kraken or Lavie to self-insure them in regulated wise. Self-insurance is not a really good thing to do because you have to keep separated the funds for the insurance and your regular funds, and they don't tend to do that so often. So it should be more regulation in this area. But I do want to address one of your thoughts, which blockchain accounting, which we are already starting to do. And this is great. I will add to your idea. Just now we can right now do our tax planning on cryptocurrency, because we all know that we have different UTXO in our wallet, and we know which one should we sell to plan our taxes automatically. And I will add to your idea that automatically we'll have a smart contract to pay our taxes to the IRS or to any authority in the world. That will be the end of, I'm thinking I'm completing your thoughts. It will be the exactly automatically process.
I'm never going to tell that. I'm not going to give this dream to my accountant, but amen to that. Finally, Tim, which, I mean, first of all, thank you so much, but I cannot end this with, and I know I'm not your father-in-law. You called 2022 at $250,000. What do you think Bitcoin will do next week?
Next week?
Yep.
My predictions are really out there because I have a better sense for what's going on. I'm not watching the trading. I have a much better sense for what's going on 5 to 10 years from now, because that's who I'm always talking to. I'm always talking to entrepreneurs who have a vision for what the world's going to look like in 5 to 10 years. So I'm hoping maybe 3 years out.
Okay.
I mean,
and you gave me 22. I think it was the most amazing.
Could go either way.
You did a beautiful job of getting out of that question I had to ask, though. Mr. Draper, I cannot thank you enough for taking the time to speak to us. Lokay Cohen of BitTax Vice President. This has been enlightening, and thank you for being with us. We were Block TV.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
For more news and updates, follow us on Twitter.